think you ought to know. Black Men's Radio. The place where men and women really speak. Oh man, what a show. It's Men's Radio. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. Men's Radio, that's the place for you. With Russ Kane, Phil Dave.
Greetings to you all over the world. Paul Andrews, hello chats. Paul, I owe you a telephone call. Robert Van Buren from his latest album, Live in Oslo. Robert Van Buren, Clockmaker to the Stars.
Watch out.
Tempest Fugit. Do you think Robert Van Buren has time on his hands?
I don't know, whatever makes him tick.
Yeah. Come on, how long can we keep this going? Come on, gang, play along.
I don't know, I can't.
The man's a clockmaker. Let's have clockmaker gags.
I know, but
Elizabeth Green has woken up live in Manhattan. What?
I said I can't face anymore.
That's really very good. You need hands to show someone you care for.
Hang on, I've got one. Give me a second.
What? Go on.
I said I've got one. Give me a second.
Yeah, I heard it. I was just letting you hang. Let's go and say hello to Azadon Brown. Yeehaw. Ding.
There you go.
That'll do. And obviously, of course. What's the matter? Oh, no. Oh, God. Hello, Dan. Your name? You're right. You're right.
For 30 minutes today, Phil.
Right.
To walk Bosley.
Bosley.
John Bosley.
Yeah. Well, Bosley was from Charlie's Angels, and his and her dog, Penny Horner.
Behave yourself.
Sit up straight, for God's sake. She's making notes. I'll only get a phone call.
If I sat up any more straight, I'd crack a rib.
You sat any more straight, you'd be Timmy Alexis Carrington Ward. Morning, Pen. Hey, Robert Van Buren says, I'm a clockmaker to a famous star. Who could that be? Veronica Curran. Hey, hello. Uh-oh. Penny Horner's at home today. Pen, you all right? Please tell me you're not feeling bad. Hope you're feeling well.
Elizabeth Green, the sun hasn't even risen here.
Well, that's Manhattan for you, baby. I love it, the fact. Now then, Timmy, are you well? I've been seeing, there's Ray. And so, as we look through the jungle and the foliage, the Ray shot of Ray Dave. We've been looking for this mysterious creature for some time. Oh, a famous star who likes clocks.
When David Attenborough goes to talk, he always seems to be chewing on something and running out of breath. All in the same thing.
As magnificently as Sir David Attenborough is at his age. Wonderful. Penny Horner, now fine, trying to catch up on work. If you don't know, Penny is work. You've never known that word. Penn runs the fabulous German Street Theatre. If you've never been to the German Street Theatre, which is kind of like my spiritual home, do go. It's an absolute gem.
How rude. Paul Andrews.
Yeah, Paul Andrews. Yeah, shut your face, Paul Andrews. If you've never been, and I always love it.
Brian Blessed. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it. That really was convincing. And when people say, where is the German Street Theatre? I always go, hazard a wild guess. It's called the German Street Theatre. Go out on a limb and guess what street it might be on. And they go, oh, are all the plays in German? At that point, I just smashed my head against the skull. Oh, Timmy says, hello. I listened to you last night, Marcy, on BBC Radio. It's just what I needed. I went out like a light girl. I said it, bitch.
Meanwhile, Luke Newman says, afternoon, gents. Feeling very tired today. In the space of 48 hours, one twin boy fractured his foot. The other twin boy felt left out and fractured his big toe. Good Lord. Well,
Riley.
Linked.
Oh, dear. Facebook user, nice impression of Dorothy from the Golden Girls there, Phil. Jesus. Robert Van Buren, he doesn't talk like that, but he does in my head. Robert Van Buren says, Russ, if you look back at my Facebook page, October to December 2020, you'll find out who. Robert, I've got a life. I've really got stuff to do. Just tell me. You have no idea. I was so tired. I did BBC Radio London last night, which was huge fun. I hadn't been broadcasting with Joe Good for many years. And suddenly they remembered I existed. So that was huge fun. Of all people in the world, I was on with Ingrid Tarrant. I couldn't make it up. And I had so many phone calls from the BBC. Are you going to be? I said, I'm going to be fine. Ingrid and I are absolutely fine. I don't have a problem. Oh, it's not going to be embarrassing. No, it's fine. It was lovely. We had huge fun. But anyway, I was so tired when Phil, listen to this. This is absolutely true. When my alarm clock went off this morning, I picked up my alarm clock. I went, hello, Russell speaking. Who's there? I thought it was my phone. I was actually talking into my alarm clock. What a dick.
Oh dear.
Now, I want to either get into the main meat of the story or do a pre-recorded. What's that? What are you doing?
It's a frame. I'm just saying you've been framed.
How did that song go? The theme tune. Don't know.
Do 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 do.
That's right. That's right.
Robert succumbed to pressure.
Yeah, he did. Because
he said, okay, I do clocks for Sir Elton John. Been doing them for around 30 years.
Thank God there's an L in that word. Well done. What kind of clocks does Elton like? I wonder. Oh, hang on. What's this? Look at this. Wow. Luke Newman, who's close to the show. Would you like to read this out, Philip?
I would love to read this out. Thank you, Russell. Luke Newman says, ooh, big news. This week, I secured my first batch of funding this week. There's too many words this week, but you don't need that. It's fine. As I'm also a CIC.
Yeah.
What's the CIC?
Oh, for God's sake, we're CICs. Penny, me, and Howard, we are CICs, which is a community interest company. Let me explain it. It's very important why I explain what that is. Neither myself, nor my business partner, Howard Jameson, nor Penny Horner, we never take a penny from anything that we do on men's radio or women's radio. Every penny that we make gets rebooted into the company. So it's a community interest company or community interest charity, and that's what we are. We're not for profit.
So Luke says, I'm also CIC for Men to Talk, which will pay for 100 meetings that I have planned in 2022. Look at that.
Yeah, well done, Lukey. Alexander Lichtenfeld.
Afternoon, guys.
Afternoon, guys. Hello, I'm Alex. How are you? Doesn't actually talk like that, but she does in my head. That's how she talks. Now, we can either do my pre-recorded interview, which was actually not because of me, but because of my guest was really interested, or we can get into what has been making me so angry. I don't know what to do with it.
Well, I think that whilst we're here, it would be a pity not to get your view on the situation.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, this is to do. I make a point, and if I don't, Phil will pull me up on it. I don't use this platform to just vent my spleen on stuff which is pissing me off. I honestly try to steer it as much as I always can to mental health. But when something affects my mental health, as well as I know hundreds of you all over the world, because I was flooded with messages over the last couple of days, absolutely, Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg, or as I prefer to call her, Karen Elaine Johnson, because that's her name. Her name is Karen Johnson. It's not Whoopi Goldberg at all, as we know.
I mean, to be honest, after the week she's had, I've been more tempted to call her Whoopsie.
Whoopsie Hitler. Anyway, so here's where we're going with this. If you don't know, you probably do, but there may be people who don't know. Whoopi Goldberg's on a show in America which plummets new levels of stupidity on a daily basis. It's called The View, and it's 5 ladies who sit around yakking.
It's basically America's answer. Well, actually, it was their first. Technically, it's the show that inspired Loose Women.
It is. It's the American version of Loose Women, but with idiots, basically. And Sen's been really supportive. He sent a beautiful message to you, Phil, which I saw, and I didn't need to say any more. Sen, you know my view. And as Elizabeth said, now what she did, they were talking about, what have we got here? Loose Women with Bigots. Beautifully said. Yeah, The View, Loose Women with Bigots. So this show on The View, which Whoopi Goldberg is a part, and they were talking about it's either Mississippi or Tennessee. I think it's Tennessee, in a very small region of Tennessee. They banned a book. And let me get through to the end of this, if you might. They banned a book called Maus, M-A-U-S. And Maus is a graphic novel. In other words, it's all drawings with balloon captions. And it explains the Holocaust by using mice. So instead of people, it's mice. Now, to be very clear, this elementary school didn't ban it completely. Let's be clear. It did not say, we're never going to show this or we're not going to teach about the Holocaust. Quite the opposite. They felt that some of the images in this book called Maus, as I said, it's M-A-U-S, it's a magnificent book if you haven't seen it, was not right for sort of 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds. It was a bit too graphic, no pun intended, because it's a graphic novel. Is that okay? So I don't want you to think it was still in their library, but it just wasn't going to be shown to 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds. And most people don't do that narrative. They just say, oh, a bunch of bigots in Tennessee or Mississippi, whatever, banned the book. They didn't. All right. They banned it for 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds. Let's be clear about that. This Whoopi Goldberg, then manages, instead of keeping it to that point, which was the discussion about the book, then starts to talk about the Holocaust. And to everybody's, apart from her, stunned amazement, says, well, it wasn't racist. And even the host, who is not the brightest spark, said, and tried to backtrack. And you could actually see that everybody else sitting around the table, if they could have left the set in the studio, they would have left the set and let this idiot dig herself an even bigger grave. But they didn't, because they can't, because that's not how media works. And she doubled down. They said, what do you mean? It wasn't racist. Oh, she said it was just white people, killing white people. It was a white on white crime. Unbelievable. And she wouldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. Anyway, there was a whole, you can imagine, outpouring. And I'm going to explain why in just a second. And I went, my partner phoned me and said, have you heard about Whoopi Goldberg? And I went nuts. I started to look at it and I went absolutely nuts on it. Ben Shapiro, who I admire greatly, his podcast on it was fantastic. Stephen Crowder on Louder with Crowder handled it magnificently as well. And I hope I can do it justice with Phil. And so I just want to get the narrative before I bring Phil in. So she then, of course, as they do in Hollywood, realized that she better save her ass and save her career. So she goes running, as they always do, to a pal, Stephen Colbert, who I'm, lukewarm about. And Stephen Colbert then tries to save her, and she doubles down. She does the whole thing again. And then she issues some half-assed apology. Now, anybody else, and I'm going to come on to why I find this so innocuous, and I want to talk about critical race theory and intersectionalism. Yes, I can talk sensibly sometimes. It's not always arsing about. She's been suspended. She hasn't been fired, which she should have been. She's been suspended for 2 weeks by The View, which is on ABC, one of the 3 big networks in America. She's been suspended for 2 weeks. Contrast that, if you will, with Sharon Osbourne, who basically was defending Piers Morgan, who got fired. What do you conclude from that? What you conclude from that is racism works one way. It's a one-way street. And that is why, for mental health, it is appalling. For people's well-being, it is appalling. She's suspended for 2 weeks. Sharon Osbourne, I'm not a Sharon Osbourne fan. I had a run-in with her many, many years ago. You know, I think what she's done is incredible for her career. I'm personally, I'm not a fan of hers, but she got fired. She did not deserve to be fired because they're so lily-livered, shit-scared of offending people. Let me read you. And of course, she quoted the Anti-Defamation League in America. Let me read you now. And I had it up before, the Oxford Dictionary definition, and I looked up the law as well this morning. In the UK, of racism is one thing. It means everybody, religion, creed, color, doesn't matter. This is the American version. It's called the Anti-Defamation League. They have changed the definition of racism. And I just can't even get myself. Racism can be defined as, this is the way they've revised it. You ready for this? The marginalization and or oppression of people of color based on a socially constructed racial hierarchy that privileges white people. Are you now surprised? I'm going to read that to you again in a minute. Are you now surprised that she quoted as part of her defense, oh, yes, I'm all with the Anti-Defamation League? Of course you bloody are. Listen to this. Listen, racism can be defined as the marginalization and or oppression of people of color based on a socially constructed racial hierarchy that privileges white people. Tells you everything you need to know. Everything you need to know. So what does that mean? What does that mean? This is why so many people are angry, which is terrible for your mental health, are confused, are disturbed, feel anxiety, all of which goes to your mental health. So it's not just me slamming Whoopi Goldberg and the people who've protected her at ABC. It's the whole notion of this. What lies behind this is that you cannot be racist to white people because they're at the top of the hierarchy as they see it. Okay? Now, what they're trying to do, and this is where it really gets difficult, is people who are Asian, who are highly successful in the United States, people who are Indian, from India, I don't mean Cherokees, who are highly successful, okay? People like that, people who Korean, they're now being what they call annexed white. I'm not making this up. In other words, so that they can be discriminated against, so that you can have a pop at Koreans, at Asians, at Indians, at Nigerians even, because they are being annexed white. This is how screwed up this is. And this is the truth. I'm not making any of this up. I mean, it drove me to distraction yesterday. I was so annoyed. But how you could now, the fact that Whoopi Goldberg's an idiot, let me explain why she's an idiot, apart from she's an idiot. She said it had nothing to do with race. Hitler, right, redefined Jews in writing. This isn't something which is speculative or, maybe he did, maybe he did. He put it in writing that instead of being a religion like Catholicism, like Roman, being Protestant or Hindu or whatever it might be, Jews are, in Hitler's words, a race. The Holocaust was all about race because Hitler and his lunatic cronies went on the View, I don't mean the TV show, that Jews were, quotes, an inferior race and needed to be exterminated. And they did a pretty good damn job on an industrial scale, killing 6 million, murdering 6 million Jews and homosexuals and gypsies and communists and dissidents and anybody else they didn't like, but certainly 6 million Jews. Okay. It was entirely about race. For her to say, oh, this was white versus white, is so disgusting. I don't know what to do with my fury. That's my speech on it. I'm sorry. That's where I'm at.
I believe that the biggest problem we have is that we live in a world now where all people see is color. And up until, I reckon, as recently as maybe 3-4 years ago, probably even less time than that, I don't actually believe that people did see color. The majority of people didn't. I actually believe that we were getting to a really good place in terms of the way people looked at other individuals. You know, it was finally happening. It was finally changing, where the bulk of people didn't decide they didn't like someone just because they had a different skin color to them. And then bang, along comes this nonsense with George Floyd. I'm sure that was the turning point back again. So sure of it. And you just hear the words Black Lives Matter. I mean, wow, they must be absolutely delighted at the divisions they have caused.
Well, it's not just that. By the way, did you read 60? First of all, the woman who founded it founded a property empire on the back of it and has buggered off. 60 gang, $60 million has gone missing from Black Lives Matter. Anyone jumping up and down about it? Anyone saying anything about it? No. What, me and Phil? $60 million. Where the hell do you think it's gone?
But let's
hazard a guess, right?
Let's put those lunatics to one side, because I don't really want to give them any more airtime than they've already got. I think it's far too much publicity for a really, what I believe to be corrupt organization. But let's shove that to one side. As far as Whoopi Goldberg's concerned, which is where obviously this sort of conversation starts.
Yeah.
I think what I have the biggest, I really am in two minds about this, would you believe? Obviously, I'm not in the least bit happy that someone could be so stupid as to say that the Holocaust was nothing to do with race, because of course it was. You know, I mean, any idiot can see that. I don't actually know where that came from. I wonder whether or not maybe she just went about expressing it in the wrong way. But what I do actually think is it's important that people like Whoopi Goldberg, who do think like that, are allowed to express that view, if only to be corrected. Because what we need to do is highlight the flaws in humanity, where they can listen to that view being expressed because someone genuinely believes it. And if someone genuinely believes it, that needs to be changed. You need to educate that person and their followers, as if to say, well, hang on a second. No, you're wrong.
My counter argument to that is this. Okay. I was a trustee for a time of the Anne Frank Trust, over here in the United Kingdom, which was designed to keeping it was an educational movement for schools and prisons to explain about, under the aegis of Anne Frank, about racism in all its forms. And that's what it was about. And I had to leave for a variety of, I just didn't have time, to be honest with you. And it wasn't that she was ignorant. You're going to tell me that a 66-year-old woman, sophisticated, in the heart of show business, really didn't know bullshit. Let's just call it out for what it is. It's bullshit. And then she says, oh, I stand corrected. Can you imagine? I'm going to say what a million people, and I don't want this taken out of context. Can you imagine if somebody on a television show had said, I'll tell you what, I've been thinking, and slavery was nothing to do with race. Slavery was really just getting cheap labor. It was an economic thing. It was nothing. Can you imagine if somebody said that? Their career would be over. But they've got to. They can. It's just like, how can you just say anything? You've got this magic shield which protects you. What they're doing, and what goes much deeper, and why we feel conscious of it, why we feel anxious, why we feel nervous, why we look at the world and go, "What the bloody hell is going on here?" Which goes to the heart of our mental health, is this. They are rewriting history. And it's all part of tearing down statues, rewriting history completely so that the children believe this to be true. Why would they not? They're children. They learn from teachers. And if this is endemic in schools, and certainly in universities, you can imagine what the future holds.
I'd rather
not.
not.
So dangerous. Well, that's why it's so. Yeah, I mean,
it's not about burying my head in the sand. I'm well aware that the threat to the human race as we know it is I believe that it's hurtling towards a time of imploding, and it really will be a case of team colors. God forgive me, but that's what I believe. I genuinely believe that everyone is basically being set up to believe that you are tribal with whoever matches your skin color. That's what it feels like.
It's intersectionalism. The term is intersectionalism, which I'm not going to bore you with, but basically it's a hierarchy. And the way that it is skewed, the way that it is sold, is that you can't be racist to anybody who's white. Now that's being annexed, as I said, to Asians, Nigerians. Excuse me, I see a slight flaw in that. Successful Indians, successful Koreans, because they're successful. Because they've got more money than you. That's part of the logic. It's quite extraordinary. That's part of the logic. So it's okay to hate a Nigerian or an Asian or a successful South Korean because they got more money than you. Therefore, they're racist.
I think what I've got the biggest problem with out of all of this is just the inequality. People from certain backgrounds bang on about inequality all the damn time, but it's only ever a one-way street. Only
a one-way street. It's a one-way street. This is a one-way. What this has shown is that I don't even know. Do you know what? I don't even know where to start with this. Melanie Hutchins says, "Hi Mel. As soon as it's tribal, you have war. And who is pulling the strings that have divided us so much?" I'll tell you why. Veronica, I'm going to come on. And then we've got Paul Andrews. It's the racial split. Is the racial split being fueled by the cash rich? They don't fight each other. So no, is the answer to that. I don't think so.
Well, I think
who are the cash rich?
Hang on. I tell you where I think that what Paul might be saying there is.
I'll bring it back up again.
When you say fueled by the cash rich, do you mean funded by them, or do you mean, in other words, that people look at those who are wealthier position or in a wealthier position, and subsequently they somehow sort of have rage because of it? Because I've always believed that jealousy plays a massive part in the problems in the world today. Massive part.
Of course it is. Veronica Curran up in Edinburgh says this: "I'm completely disgusted by Whoopi Goldberg. She never be viewed again in my eye. Boris Johnson is also disgusting, and the families of dead deserve more." Can't disagree. Now, this is more to the point, which is why I wanted to discuss this today. I'm not having a great mental health day today. It saddens me. And that is my point. I didn't want to just come on and bash Whoopi Goldberg because I think she's despicable. Be quite frank about it. And a liar. I don't believe anything that she's said. But it really, the last kind of 24, 48 hours, really affected my mental health. I couldn't get over it. I knew I had to do something about it. But what? You feel impotent. And Veronica Curran has just echoed why I wanted to talk about it. I'm not having great mental health today. It saddens me, she says.
I feel
this is all fuel to the fire. Sorry, Phil, go on.
I was going to say, I feel sad as well, if I'm honest with you, because I've always admired Whoopi Goldberg. Always. I've always thought her to be great fun. I've always admired her work and just, I had a lot of time for her right up until that moment where she just shatters my illusion of her. No, I don't think for a second she'd care less. So what to her? Which is lost one.
2 weeks is a slap on the wrist. It means it's just a multi-millionaire. It means bugger all. Paul Andrews is saying this, and I'll answer it if I may, and then Phil, please jump in. It was a proposition, not a statement. The rich are getting richer quicker, and the corruption in the UK and the US is rife. Well, it always has been. It's nothing new. So could it be to the benefit of some for the masses to be fighting each other? We are the masses, Paul. Phil, me, you, everybody watching around the world. We are the masses. If we're not working, the rich aren't going to get any richer. All right? There's no magic tree. If we're not working and doing our little drone work, all of us, all over the globe, the rich have not, take Amazon. If we're not buying shit, right, they're not going to get any richer.
Do you know,
that's how it works.
You've inadvertently hit the nail on the head. I've just suddenly realized why the world is having, I believe, as to quote Ray Gelato, having this breakdown at the moment.
Yeah, it was Ray Gelato. I just want to underline that. Months ago, Ray, Colin and I meet every Saturday morning for a cigar, just the three of us. And Ray said, I think the world's having a collective nervous breakdown. And I thought it was the greatest phrase.
I tell you why I believe this, though, to be true, is that, think about it, the narrative at the moment is power to the minority. And I'm just talking about minority race. I'm talking about minority voice.
Mm-hmm, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
So think of those who have probably the most unusual opinion are somehow getting the largest or the loudest voice.
The tail is wagging the dog, and it's a tiny little cut-off tail too.
But by doing that, what you're doing is en masse telling people collectively that they are wrong. They're feeling the way they feel. They're wrong for thinking the way they think, and they're wrong for doing what they do.
And when we're wrong and they're right.
And when you start tipping people on their heads like that, en masse, it's not really a wonder that everyone's struggling with it. Of course, that's exactly what the problem is. If you're going to give the minority voice the loudest volume, it's going to have a massive impact. And I wholeheartedly believe that that's sort of one of the biggest problems that we've got right now.
If we take
any sort of it,
I'm going to walk into the minefield, probably blow myself to bits, but here we go. If we take the transgender situation, if you'd arrived from outer space and looked at social media, right, you would think that every other person was transgender. You would think at least 1/3 of the population was transgender, or needed to be, or wanted to be, or couldn't be. It's nonsense. It's not true. Now, let me be very clear. If somebody is unhappy in their sexuality, they should do whatever they want to do. A, because it's none of my business. B, it's none of my business. Your private life is your private life. It is not for me, for Phil, for anybody else to comment on it. I don't care. Doesn't mean I'm heartless. It means I don't care. It's your business. You must do what everybody has tried to make themselves happy. You don't have an automatic right to be happy, but it's up to you. And if you wanted to to move from being a man to a woman, or a woman to a man, whatever, that's fine. Of course it is. I've no issue with that whatsoever. Why would I? Why would I? It's up to you. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't concern me. It's your life. You must lead it as you wish. Of course you should. But when you're giving beta blockers to 4-year-olds, because you think at 4-year-old they know that they're in the wrong body, this is the path to lunacy. Those people should be in jail. But because, as Phil says,
it's arguably a form of abuse.
It's what? Go on.
It's arguably a form of abuse.
It is abuse. It is abuse. These snake oil salesmen are saying, oh, yes, well, your 4-year-old definitely needs to try. What the hell are you doing? Your frontal cortex hasn't even developed till you're in your teens. You don't know who you are or what you are. This is nonsense. This is outrageous. And people have just stood by and go, oh, yes, that's okay. Yeah, we better let that happen. Because they're shit scared of saying anything. Because as Phil so rightly says, this tiny minority is trying to enforce its frankly bizarre views on the world, and everyone's supposed to stand by and go, okay, good on you. This is crazy. I mean, it's just not right. As an adult, do what you want. Don't start inflicting it on 4-year-old children. Shocking. It's shocking, and we all have to stand by and go, oh, isn't that marvelous? No, it's not marvelous. It's awful. Why are we not allowed to say that anymore? Seriously, why we? And what this does is, and the Whoopi Goldberg thing, and this, it is forcing divisions. And Phil and I have been saying for ages that all of this, the reason we feel anxious all the time, sometimes very angry all the time, we feel confused all the time, is because we are being forced to take sides. I don't want to take sides. Phil doesn't want to take sides. I know that. I've known Phil for a long time. But we're being forced to take a side. And that those sides, and what scares me, hang on, Phil, one sec. What scares me is those sides are getting more and more extreme. Because as we're being pushed and our mental health is being challenged every day, we have to take a stand. I've said for 2 years there will be another civil war in America. I wholeheartedly believe this. I have done for a long time that there will be another civil war in America because those polarizations are so extreme, there is no coexistence possible. There's no coexistence possible now. That is the nub of it. If you can't agree in the middle somewhere and rub along and get on with life, you've got a huge problem on your hands. If you cannot coexist peacefully, it's going to end up bad. It's going to end up very bad. Would you like to read Aza's comment?
Aza says, I believe that we must start thinking as a global community. No, I don't. We must start recognizing that all races and genders should be recognized equally. We must start recognizing that any race or group pushing itself as superior has the makings of a tyranny. Well, Aza, the main reason I say that I don't think we should start thinking globally is because actually I believe that it's globalization that is ultimately causing these biggest problems. Because, and by that I mean, when you have a load of cultures being shoved together all over the place now, you go to all the major cities in the world, it seems to be the case. That's where the problems seem to lie. I'm not saying for a second that when countries sort of kept themselves to themselves and had their own identity that there weren't issues. The biggest difference is that those issues were potentially with their neighbors. It wasn't actually within. And now, because of globalization and what everyone deems multiculturalism, because integration has been so diabolical on so many levels, people are just finding differences and using those differences as almost weaponry towards one another.
And it brings us back to Whoopi Goldberg, who said that she only sees race, she only defines racism if she can see it. If she can see it. What a moron. In other words, it's only racist if one is a person of color and one is white. Why not just say what you mean? That's what she means. That's what she means.
It's just wholly unpleasant. And I really believe that if we were just... I know people go on and say, oh, religion's the root of all evil. No, it's not. It's not just about religion, for crying out loud. Because you do away with religion, let's say hypothetically, you do away with organized religion altogether, then people will find division with color of skin. Then people will find division in accents. Then people will find division in gender. It's nothing.
People will, it's almost like, Phil, it's almost like people would find division over a little piece of fabric over your mouth. That would never happen, would it? That wouldn't happen.
The point I'm trying to get at is that I just believe people need to be brought up to realize that some people are different. They live their lives the way they want to. And don't let anyone tell you that your life is wrong because you don't happen to either A, agree with them, B, follow the same God that they follow, or C, believe in the politics that they do. It's just all nonsense. It's absolutely ridiculous. Life is totally and utterly subjective. And the sooner people realize that we live in a country where we are allowed, by and large, we live in a world, really, it's only the Western world, where people are allowed to live their lives the way they want to. And they're not told, like they are in parts of the Far East, how they should live their lives. We're given that freedom. And with that freedom means choice. We've got the choice to do what we want. And for someone who's got that same freedom that they enjoy, clearly a little too much, to turn around and say, you're wrong, that's part of the problem. No, it's the people who are saying you're wrong are who's wrong, not those who believe what they want to and live the life the way
but they're given endless airtime. This is what sickens me. What sickens me is that 6 million people die in the Holocaust. Nothing's been learned. They'd do it again in a heartbeat. I've always said this. They would do it again in a heartbeat. Nothing has been learned. And you get professional gobshites like Whoopi Goldberg, gob on a stick, who can come out, spew this filth, get a slap on the wrist, get suspended for 2 weeks. It's all fine. Nothing's been learned. Nothing. Now, you see, we need to have faith in our own feelings. Well, fine. But when you're told, Melanie, you're wrong. You're wrong. It's fine giving beta blockers to 4-year-old children. You're wrong. You just don't understand. You must be stupid. What are we supposed to do with our feelings except internalize it? And that does not help mental health. That is what upsets me. Dave, was that Dave? That was the proposition I was trying to make. Yes, divide and conquer. Now, can we just look at that for a second? There is a huge theory, that some secret cabal is plotting to. What are they plotting to do? Why would they want this? Because how is it? I'm going to be really. Oh, yes, no, Dave, you don't have to point that out. They were monsters.
I did say that earlier, I promise you.
They were Dave Sleep, please. They were monsters. They didn't give a shit who they killed. The idea, when Whoopi Goldberg says it wasn't about race, it was all about the Aryan race. Blue-eyed, blonde, Aryan race was superior. It was the only race that could be allowed to survive. Anything that didn't conform to their ideas of the Aryan race. And when you look at their leaders, what a bunch of ugly bastards they were. So the hypocrisy is not lost on anybody, right? But think about it. What a grotesque crew, right? But anything that didn't adhere to their vision of the Aryan race. So please don't point out it wasn't war. It was a war on everybody. Everybody who wasn't Aryan. Of course it was. Now, Paul Andrews is like, let me go back to my point. It's this sort of, they want to divide and conquer. They want to divide. How, if you break it down to anything, it's about power and money. It's only ever about power and it's only ever about money. That's it. So this secret cabal, how can having a world tearing itself to pieces be good? I'm going to be very blunt. How can it be good financially for these people, for the super rich? How can it possibly be good? How can it? I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, if you say to me, politicians aren't in charge, I totally agree with you. They're puppets. Totally agree with you. There are, of course, people way above them pulling the strings. Of course there are. In America, in Britain, all over the world. Guaranteed. But they're there for power and they're there for money. They're not there because they want to see the world in flames. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help their business if the buildings are all on fire. I'm sorry I'm putting it very, very crudely. See what I'm saying? What have we got? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Power, money, and sex. In the immortal in the immortal words of Meatloaf, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
I wonder if he said that about the jab, allegedly.
Well, that's it. The time we Well, he did. I saw Meatloaf's last 2 videos. He looked so ill, bless him. He was so ill. He was about to go under some a major surgery. He looked shocking. He could just about to. He couldn't sing Happy Birthday. That's how ill he was. He tried to sing Happy Birthday and he said his throat couldn't do it. Can you imagine Meatloaf with that huge operatic voice couldn't manage to sing Happy Birthday? The time we live, it reminds me of Lord of the Flies. Yeah. It's all gone. This is why our mental health is so damn fragile at the moment, because it feels so unsettled. Here we go. Look, I do. Where we got? Sorry, I've lost the thing here. I don't think there is a cabal, but I do think some people will capitalize on the fighting and disagreements. Well, you have to look no further than people like, I'm going to state the absolute obvious, Halliburton in the Middle Eastern wars provide. It's the perfect business model. They provide the weaponry to destroy bridges, buildings, and infrastructure. Then they provide all the tools needed to rebuild them. It's genius. It's absolutely genius. I mean, it's the best business model you could imagine. We supply you to destroy everything, and then we supply you the stuff to rebuild it. God. It's extraordinary, isn't it? If I said that, you'd say, oh, you're just making it up. Of course I'm not. Wouldn't dream of it. Meatloaf's demise was heart-wrenching. Yeah, absolutely was. Yeah.
I've long thought that the best thing to do is just to focus on your own little world, not one's own little world.
I do. But I feel when Howard, Penny, and I started out on this adventure, Howard starting women's radio, and a year later, Howard and I starting men's radio, and Penny being there from the beginning, I feel morally. I know this. I know it's me talking. You wouldn't think so. I feel morally obliged that I can't just do that. If I can affect any change, then I've got to do it.
So the thing is,
I gave my word that I would.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and this chap was getting so unbelievably wound up at the situation with the government right now. Really wound up. And he was saying, surely you don't still support Boris. How could you? Because he's never really been a conservative, but surely you don't still support Boris. Surely you now see the problem with supporting the right, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, look, obviously I'm not happy about the situation, but what's the point in me getting angry about it? What on earth is it going to do? How is me getting wound up by the actions of a bunch of individuals who couldn't care less what I think do me any good?
You're irrelevant to them. I'm irrelevant to them. We're all irrelevant.
I know, completely and utterly.
They couldn't care less.
And I just don't.
We feel angry, Phil, because we feel. You know why? We feel mugged off. We feel like a bunch of chumps. Put politics, if I can, to one side. When a group of people are telling you, you got to do this, you got to do that, and like good little citizens, that's what we do, and they're laughing behind their backs, they're laughing behind our backs, saying, what a bunch of bloody buffoons. We're having a jolly good time. And you can't be there when your loved ones are dying. You got to talk to your parents through a bloody glass wall in a care home. No one can stand that.
We know all of that. We know. I couldn't agree more. It's horrendous. There's no justifying it. There's no.
And if you, and I'm serious, if you can not get angry, then it's fantastic. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm serious, because believe me, everyone's mental health has been kicked recently, because you review everything. You think, what a bloody fool I was. And some people, I'm sure there's people watching who have lost, I don't know, mums, dads, brothers, sisters, God knows, grandparents who they couldn't be with. They must be steaming. I would be bloody furious.
I understand it. Of course. And as I say, there is no possible way that anyone can justify it. But the point I was trying to make out with this friend who was getting most wound up about it, and started descending into a conversation about Donald Trump as well, which was most peculiar. Well, all good roads lead to Donald Trump, apparently. But
everything in the world's his fault.
Ed,
I think he was on the grassy knoll. I think it was the other government.
I'm not saying I agree or disagree with what he says. I'm saying I don't understand sort of how getting so worked up about it helps. Now, it's interesting because Elizabeth Green's saying because we get a voice to ripple effect. And I hear that. I understand, if you shout to a loud enough chamber, I suppose the voice will reverb and echo, but it doesn't necessarily do one any good along the way. To get that angry, to make that sort of impact, one would assume you have to do a lot of persuading, a lot of shouting. And I don't believe that that's very good for up here. And that's more what matters to me.
You're not going to persuade people. You're not going to persuade them. That's the fact of the matter. Let me give you another example of the way things are skewed. I watch a lot of North American news because, as they say, when America sneezes, Britain catches a cold. All right. In Canada, Trudeau, who I am have views on, we'll leave that to one side. Trudeau is saying, he was asked, what about the trucker convoy? What do you think about that, Prime Minister Trudeau? And he said, they're a tiny minority. That was his words, a tiny minority. Something like 55,000 trucks are involved in this. I'm not talking about your local Tesco's delivery little lorry. I'm talking about, the big North American, big Arctics, the things I'm talking about. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians are saying, we've had enough. We've had enough of you trying to impose your ridiculous views on us as Canadians. Canadians, the most polite people on the planet. The joke goes, they don't have an army because they'd be saying, no, after you. Please, you shoot first. No, please, it's no trouble. No. You kill me first. Let's see how it goes. Canadians are delightful people. They truly are. For them to get so riled against this woke bloke who's been running their country into the ground. And when you see the footage of hundreds of, I don't mean tens of thousands, gang, hundreds of thousands of people supporting the truckers in this gigantic convoy that stretches for mile after mile after mile after mile. And he says, oh, it's a tiny minority. No, it wasn't. This is how they try to control the media. And this is why they get angry when the media says, you're lying. Look at the pictures. You're just lying. Ramsey says this, and I won't argue with you, Ramsey, on this. I won't argue. I can see exactly what you're saying. Trump only served to crack open the pre-existing racial fault lines. It's a brilliant phrase. The pre-existing racial fault lines in the US hasn't helped unite the country. Yeah, but it was there. If it wasn't there in the if it wasn't there in the first place, whatever he said wouldn't have made any difference. They would have said, "You're a raving lunatic. Shut up." It was there. That's how they feel on both sides of the fence. On both sides, Ramsey. You know that. This isn't a one-way street. Well, it is in terms of the view. Interesting, and this is absolutely true. Paul Claridge says, and thank you for your kind comments about when I was on BBC last night. Thank you. I know the BBC have little or no coverage of the Canadian truckers. Of course not, because it doesn't match their agenda. Their agenda is that woke is great. No, woke's rubbish. Always was. Always will be.
I can't count, seriously, the number of things that comes up now on... I obviously sort of follow, like I'm sure you do, Russ, a lot of news feeds from various organizations.
Absolutely.
I suppose what one might call a news junkie. And I can't count the number every single time that something comes up from the BBC. It's easily something that could fall into the category of wokeism. And you just look at it and you think, honestly, I just can't bear it. Seriously, can't stand it.
I wanted to discuss Whoopi Goldberg last night, and I was asked not to. I was very, very politely and very nice. They wanted to keep everything light, and I get that. They wanted to keep absolutely everything light. I have no problem with that. but I did want to discuss it. I said that would be my subject, and the producer, who I know well, and I have no issue with that. I'd rather I was told, look, let's just keep it light. I'm happy with that. I can do that. That I don't have a problem with. I was happy to be invited to be a guest for an hour, and I was happy to play by their terms. But I wouldn't have been happy if they'd have twisted the whole thing. But if people are upfront about it, let's just keep it light and jolly. That's absolutely fine. I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. I don't have an issue with that. I do have an issue when you are, instead of giving news, giving propaganda. News is meant to be news. It is not promoting. This is why there will be a pushback, and this pushback will not be nice. As a Canadian, did I read this? I'm so sorry.
Don't think so.
As a Canadian, I can attest, this is from Asa, that the issues in the USA with race, COVID are being reflected in Canada, yet the news media keeps a lid on many of the issues. It absolutely does.
Because it doesn't suit. And this is the problem. Now, I'm afraid that sort of whatever, this is actually sort of why, as much as I lambast social media, and I think very ill of social media a lot of the time, the awful truth is it gives a voice to people who are probably sort of just saying what a lot of people are thinking. But because it doesn't necessarily suit the narrative, suit the agenda, that's not what's being said in the mainstream. So by that alone, you could easily say the mainstream are trying to, I'm not saying that people are trying to be mind controlled, but they're trying to influence, if you will, in the mainstream.
Yeah.
And that's what I have a major problem.
Let me give you a little example of how the world has turned upside down. There's a show that I follow in America. It keeps coming on and off YouTube. YouTube keep suspending it, then allowing it, suspending it, then allow it. It's called, and I've mentioned it many times, it's called Louder with Crowder, with a guy who was a comedian and now does what we do, well, on a huge scale, called Steven Crowder. Now, Steven Crowder is painted. All right, let me just set up the stall very, very quickly in the last 3 minutes. He has a gun on the table of his desk and he wears a shoulder holster, not because he's expected to get attacked. Duh. He does it to show that he can. All right, I don't go with that, but that's what he does, okay? And he's painted as a white supremacist. His handling of the Whoopi Goldberg situation was superb. He's not a white supremacist, but it's so easy to just say, oh, Steven Crowder, white supremacist. A lot of what his stuff goes way too far. Yeah, but that's the nature of the show. Same as Howard Stern, same as Joe Rogan. You know, they push it until it squeaks. I get that. But you know, when you have somebody who is painted as being so extreme, who handled it intelligently, superbly, quoted the law, showed the stupidity of Whoopi Goldberg's comments, showed how insensitive it was to Jews, who he's supposed to hate, clearly doesn't. Neither does his sidekick, Dave Landau, who I follow as well. When you see these people being painted and then you suddenly say, who's right here? Who's right? Because one person is clearly just lying through their teeth and the other person is pointing it out. And yet the person pointing it out is portrayed as the villain. That's why our mental health is all over the place. That's why. Because left is right and right is left. It's been a heavy show. It's been a heavy show, but you know what? If we can't talk about it as adults with our family here on Men's Radio Station, what's the point? And no one's screaming and shouting at everybody. I hope we're not talking into an echo chamber. Everyone's views all over the world are always welcome. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of our global audience. You know, nobody screams and shouts and does insults. If we disagree, we can talk about it in a calm, proper manner, and we can still be friends. And that's what it's about. When did we lose the fact we can say, I agree to disagree, let's go and have a drink? I can't think of a better way to end the show, quite frankly. I think that's where we're at.
Well, quite. In that case, I suggest that you just have to join us all over again Friday from midday. Thank you for all your comments. Good show, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.